I've lived in this city all my life. I grew up on the Upper East Side, and when I was 10 years old, I was rich. I was an aristocrat, riding around in taxis, surrounded by comfort, and all I thought about was art and music. Now I'm 36, and all I think about is money.
Alright, so now I have come here for paragliding, and I think this is the spot from where they take off. Yeah, and the price is 3,800 rupees. Yeah, so I'll do it. Then I think he's the guy. He's the main admi. He's the person who takes care of. Let's see how it's gonna be. It's 20 minutes for 3,800.
I was beginning to realize that the only way to make this evening bearable would be to ask Andre a few questions. Asking questions always relaxes me. In fact, I sometimes think that my secret profession is that I'm a private investigator, a detective. I always enjoy finding out about people. Even if they're in absolute agony, I always find it very interesting.
Let's go. Welcome to the sky.
Yay! This is fun. All right. Ha. What's your name?
Ogel.
Huh?
Ogel.
Ogel, huh?
My name is Ogel.
All right. Where are you from?
I'm French.
French. Nice. This thing is cool.
Thanks.
You are living a cool life, huh?
Ouais, bah.
I'm jealous of you.
We are free of our own life.
Yeah.
But ouais, that's very cool. This kind of sport.
I'd stay back and you.
Finally, I got around to asking him what he'd been up to in the last few years.
God, I'm just dying to hear it.
Really?
Really.
At first, he seemed a little reluctant to go into it. So I just kept asking, and finally he started to answer.
Conference on para-theatrical work then.
And since how long you are doing this?
No, more than 20 years.
Oh, 20 years into this?
More.
More than, okay.
We are in 2022, 22 years. 22 years this year. With the paragliding, you see, you can go slowly. I can take some speed back.
Yeah. This is fun.
I can make some turn on the right, little bit strong.
Shit. Oh god.
And take a slow. Up, going up. Allez, again I take some speed.
Alright.
That's what you can do in paragliding. In parasailing, no way. It means you don't have to pilot parasailing.
Okay. So how many rides do you do daily on a daily basis?
Depends. It's a good question because some days I do zero flight.
Okay.
And some days I can do 10 flights in the afternoon.
Alright.
Like this.
But it's a good amount of money, I feel like, you know.
Yeah, some days it's very good, but many days it's zero.
Why, like, people are not there?
No, because it's not good for flying, because it's depending of the weather and the wind.
So, did you ever go to India?
Oh yes, I went to India in the spring, Wally, and I came back home feeling all wrong. I mean, you know, I'd been to India and I just felt like a tourist. I'd found nothing.
Yes, sir.
And since how long you are in Varkala?
Well, I used to live more to 15 years in Varkala.
Oh, in Varkala you are in 15 years?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's like home for you, huh?
It's a second home. My wife is Indian.
Oh, your wife is Indian, huh?
We are half in France, half in India now. The last 2 years we spent half in France, half in India.
Okay.
In the years. But before we were spending like 9 months per year in Varkala. We was just escape for the month.
Okay. All right.
I go a little bit on the sea and I will make 360. You can keep your camera on and
yeah.
Many kites. No, many today.
And in France also you do the same, like you are.
Yeah. I teach also. Here I don't teach because in India to develop this kind of activities used to be very tricky.
Okay.
I'll tell you, you are lucky to come this month because I used to spend 2 months without flying.
Yeah, well, most people I met thought there was something wrong with me. They didn't say that, but I could tell that that was what they thought. But, see, what I think I experienced was, for the first time in my life, to know what it means to be truly alive. Now, that's very frightening, because with that comes an immediate awareness of death, because they go hand in hand. You know, the kind of impulse that led to Walt Whitman, that led to Leaves of Grass. You know, that feeling of being connected to everything means to also be connected to death. And that's pretty scary. But I really felt as if I were floating above the ground, not walking, you know, and I could do things like go out to the highway and watch the lights go from red to green and think, how wonderful.
Which part? You from Tamil Nadu also?
No, I'm from UP, Kanpur, but I stay in Bangalore.
Okay.
Like, if you ever come to Bangalore, just let me know.
Yeah.
Like,
We will contact you.
Yeah. Like we have places.
I like the city. After it's to go in a city, Indian city. If I have the choice, of course, it's Bangalore.
Okay. Yep.
It's cosmopolitan.
Yeah, and weather is good and people are cool. Like
The weather is good. The
Yeah.
people are open minded. Like from everywhere.
I mean, I really feel that everything I've done is horrific. Just horrific.
My God, but why?
You see, I've seen a lot of death in the last few years, Wally, and there's one thing that's for sure about death. You do it alone, you see. That seems quite certain, you see. That I've seen. That the people around your bed mean nothing. Your reviews mean nothing. Whatever it is, you do it alone. And so the question is, when I get on my deathbed, what kind of a person am I going to be? And I'm just very dubious about the kind of person who would have lived his life those last few years the way I did.
Well, why should you feel that way?
yeah. Wind is good.
They stopped me 2 months.
Our minds are just focused on these goals and plans, which in themselves are not reality.
No. Goals and plans are not, I mean, they're fantasy. They're part of a dream life. And I mean, you know, it always just does seem so ridiculous somehow that everybody has to have his little goal in life. I mean, it's so absurd in a way. I mean, when you consider that it doesn't matter which one it is.
Right. And because people's concentration is on their goals, in their life they just live each moment by habit. Really like the Norwegian telling the same stories over and over again. Life becomes habitual. And it is today. I mean, very few things happen now, like that moment when Marlon Brando sent the Indian woman to accept the Oscar and everything went haywire. Things just very rarely go haywire now. And if you're just operating by habit, then you're not really living. You know, in Sanskrit, the root of the verb to be is the same as to grow or to make grow.
Huh.
Paragliding used to be prohibited for 2 months and a half here.
Okay.
And it's like 15 years. I'm flying here, nothing used to happen, means no accident. And they told me, no, man, it's too dangerous.
Okay.
But finally,
Things are working, huh?
Finally, it's bad things for good things. So
Okay. But yeah, hope for the best. I think the future will be,
Just what I want, like I know you have some limitation about flying in Varkala. Means it's not a big place.
Yeah.
So the most important, it's like no accident. That's the most important. If
right.
But Rock used to practice certain exercises like, for instance, if he were right-handed, all today he would do everything with his left hand. All day, eating, writing, everything, opening doors in order to break the habits of living. Because the great danger he felt for him was to fall into a trance out of habit. He had a whole series of very simple exercises that he had invented just to keep seeing, feeling, remembering. Because you have to learn now. It didn't used to be necessary, but today you have to learn something like, are you really hungry, or are you just stuffing your face? Because that's what you do out of habit. I mean, you can afford to do it, so you do it, whether you're hungry or not. You know, if you go to the Buddhist meditation center, they make you taste each bite of your food, so it takes 2 hours. It's horrible to eat your lunch, but you're conscious of the taste of your food. If you're just eating out of habit, then you don't taste the food, and you're not conscious of the reality of what's happening to you. You enter the dream world again.
Now, do you think maybe we live in this dream world because we do so many things every day that affect us in ways that somehow we're just not aware of?
So you all, like, only fly in Varkala in India, or you have other places as well?
Alors, for my professional part, it's only in Varkala.
Right.
After, in Kerala, you can fly in Bagaman.
Okay.
It's a friend of me, and also running some professional activities.
All right.
But means if I go there, it's for flying solo, for meet them and fly solo for myself.
Okay.
And other way, I like to go to North India in the mountain in Himalaya. I mean, it's so.
I mean, really, tell me, why do we require a trip to Mount Everest in order to be able to perceive one moment of reality? I mean, is Mount Everest more real than New York? I mean, isn't New York real? I mean, you see, I think if you could become fully aware of what existed in the cigar store next door to this restaurant, I think it would just blow your brains out. I mean, isn't there just as much reality to be perceived in the cigar store as there is on Mount Everest? I mean, what do you think? You see, I think that not only is there nothing more real about Mount Everest, I think there's nothing that different in a certain way. I mean, because reality is uniform in a way, so that if your perceptions are, if your own mechanism is operating correctly, it would become irrelevant to go to Mount Everest and sort of absurd because, of course, on some level, obviously, it's very different from a cigar store on 7th Avenue.
Well, I agree with you, Wally.
So how many countries you have traveled till now?
I don't know, I never used to count.
How many stamps do you have on your passport?
I don't know because I don't know.
You're a word traveler, huh?
Many.
Like, I'm just wondering, you travel...
Not so much, no, I say many stamps, but I used to go many times in same kind of country. But I used to travel in India, in New Zealand, in Australia, in Asia, like Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand.
Okay, yes, we're bored. We're all bored now. But has it ever occurred to you, Wally, that the process that creates this boredom that we see in the world now may very well be a self-perpetuating, unconscious form of brainwashing created by a world totalitarian government based on money, and that all of this is much more dangerous than one thinks, and it's not just a question of individual survival, Wally, but that somebody who's bored is asleep, and somebody who's asleep will not say no? See, I keep meeting these people. Just a few days ago, I met this man whom I greatly admire. He's a Swedish physicist, Gustav Bjornstrand, and he told me that he no longer watches television, he doesn't read newspapers, and he doesn't read magazines. He's completely cut them out of his life because he really does feel that we're living in some kind of Orwellian nightmare now, and that everything that you hear now contributes to turning you into a robot.
So I'm just wondering that you happen to travel a lot of countries around the world, and how come you fall in love with an Indian woman,
It's long time, so
okay.
It's long time. So I used to traveling. I was 19. I was already traveling.
Oh, okay.
I was already working. Like you work 4 months crazy, and after you can take 2-3 months for traveling, and
okay. Yeah.
And how I met my wife? But it's a good question. Good question, Sinabi. because why not, you know? Hey, Indian girl, pretty nice, huh? Like,
yeah, I'll say one thing about it.
But they become more beautiful after traveling in Europe.
Yeah.
Because mind and everything change, and that's very cool. Means that's good to open your mind.
Yeah.
For everybody.
But I'll say one thing about like Indian women, like they are very loyal. I'll say.
Loyal.
Yeah.
Well, not all. It's like everywhere. Western can be very loyal as well, but some of. That means, you know, like you have everything to make a world. You know, like.
Right.
When I was at Findhorn, I met this extraordinary English tree expert who had devoted his life to saving trees. Just got back from Washington, lobbying to save the redwoods. He's 84 years old. He always travels with a backpack because he never knows where he's going to be tomorrow. And when I met him at Findhorn, he said to me, "Where are you from?" And I said, "New York." He said, "Ah, New York, yes, that's a very interesting place. Do you know a lot of New Yorkers who keep talking about the fact that they want to leave but never do?" And I said, "Oh, yes." And he said, "Why do you think they don't leave?" I gave him different banal theories. He said, "Oh, I don't think it's that way at all." He said, "I think that New York is the new model for the new concentration camp, where the camp has been built by the inmates themselves, and the inmates are the guards, and they have this pride in this thing they've built. They've built their own prison, and so they exist in a state of schizophrenia, where they are both guards and prisoners, and as a result, they no longer have, having been lobotomized, the capacity to leave the prison they've made, or to even see it as a prison." And then he went into his pocket and he took out a seed for a tree and he said, "This is a pine tree." He put it in my hand and he said, "Escape before it's too late."
Okay, you put your camera?
Yeah.
So like when I will ask you to stand up, we will be at 2-3 meters from the ground.
Okay.
Before you sit. Hi! Sugam! Suganande!
You see, I keep thinking that what we need is a new language. A language of the heart. Languages in the Polish forest where language wasn't needed. Some kind of language between people that is a new kind of poetry. That's the poetry of the dancing bee that tells us where the honey is. And I think that in order to create that language, you're going to have to learn how you can go through a looking glass into another kind of perception where you have that sense of being united to all things, and suddenly you understand everything.
Are you ready for some dessert?
I think I'll just have an espresso. Thank you.
I'll also have one. Thank you. And could I also have an amaretto?
Certainly, sir.
So we are landing now. So I have to keep my leg straight, huh? Finally we landed.
Yep. Well, do you want to know my actual response to all this? I mean, do you want to hear my actual response?
Yes.
See, my actual response, I mean, I'm just trying to survive, you know? I mean, I'm just trying to earn a living, just trying to pay my rent and my bills. I mean, I live my life. I enjoy staying home with Debbie. I'm reading Charlton Heston's autobiography, and that's that.
Yes. Thanks, mate. Thanks, Ogel. Nice trip with you, huh? Best of luck for your future rides, huh? Thank you.
Welcome at any time.
Yeah, all right. Finally, paragliding is done, and that was amazing experience. So if you are coming to Varkala, it is highly recommended. Yeah, it is a bit costly. It is 3,800 rupees per person.
I've lived in this city all my life. I grew up on the Upper East Side, and when I was 10 years old, I was rich. I was an aristocrat, riding around in taxis, surrounded by comfort, and all I thought about was art and music. Now I'm 36, and all I think about is money.